Hey there, welcome to another Photoshop tutorial from tutcast.com. In today's tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the shadow highlight adjustment to help fix underexposed images. The same adjustment can be used to fix overexposed images, but for this tutorial, we're going to be focusing on underexposed images. So if we take a look at the image in front of us, there are clearly some areas of this image which are underexposed. If we take a look at the bottom left-hand corner and the far right side of the image, they're a lot darker than they should be, and we're going to take a look and fix that right now. So we're going to head to Image Adjustments and then Shadows Highlights right over there. Now it will load in the default settings for the Shadows and Highlights adjustment. Now I will note very quickly I am on Photoshop CS4, but Photoshop CS3 has this adjustment and Photoshop CS2, and I believe Photoshop CS has it as well. So the newer versions of Photoshop definitely have this adjustment. So here are the default settings. It automatically brightens up the shadows of the image. And right off the bat, without showing the extra options, we have two sliders. We have the shadows amount and the highlights amount. Basically, the higher the shadows amount, the brighter the shadows get, and the higher the highlights amount, the darker the extreme highlights get. But if we really want to, let me pop the default settings back. If we really want to get in depth, we can click on Show More Options, which brings up this big long dialog box, the extension of it. And you'll notice we now have a bunch of new sliders that appear. We have tonal width and radius under both shadows and highlights, and here at the bottom we have color correction and midtone contrast. But what do all these new sliders do? Well, basically at the top here under tonal width, if we decrease the tonal width, it will only focus on the darkest areas of the image, and if we increase the tonal width, it will focus on some of the lighter areas as well. Now the radius tells it how much around each pixel to focus on. So if we decrease our tonal width to, let's say, 20% and then increase our radius, it will focus on 80 pixels outside of the dark areas that are determined by tonal width. Now this sounds incredibly confusing, and it'll take a lot of trial and error to figure it out exactly what's going on. And it works exactly the same under highlights. So if we want to darken up some of the highlights, we would grab our amount slider, increase a little bit, and then play around with tonal width and radius. So if you want it only to focus on the highlights, we would decrease our tonal width, and if you want it to include some of the midtones and shadows, we would increase our tonal width, just like that. And of course the radius we spoke about works exactly the same. And at the bottom here we have two more sliders, color correction and midtone contrast. Let me decrease these a little bit. Basically midtone contrast sharpens up the image a little bit. It takes the midtones and increases the contrast or decreases the contrast. As you can see here, it's sharpening up those midtones a little bit, giving the whole image much sharper look. And the color correction slider works similar to a saturation slider, where if we increase the color correction, it increases the vibrance a little bit, and if we decrease it, it turns it a little bit black and white, focusing on some of the more predominant areas of the color in the image. So that's a basic overview of the shadow and highlight dialog box under adjustments in Photoshop. Works again in Photoshop CS4, CS3, CS2, and I believe Photoshop CS as well. So you can go ahead and save your settings for future use or load them in later and apply them to another photo. It's just a great way to fix overexposed and underexposed images in Photoshop. And of course, click OK when you're happy with the result. And you can definitely tell the difference. It's taking those dark areas and brighten them up pretty well. So I hope you learned something from this tutorial. Definitely apply it to your underexposed or overexposed images. Make sure to comment and rate this video. Head over to tutcast.com, subscribe to our RSS feed if you want. And until next time, this is Howard from tutcast.com. Take care.